This is Face of Sports, WESN Content Capital. How you felt about the kiss on the lip?
That's the business. I'm nothing to do with that.
And I find that was distasteful.
The national senior team, whether you like it or not, that is the model for all other teams to follow.
I'm assuming that the regional requirement may be a much stricter requirement.
This is not about Pro League and Super League. This is a league run by the Normalization Committee that I'm responsible for.
Nobody expected FIFA to fund this arrangement.
If we don't get a professional attitude towards this, we are doomed for failure.
You break the balance, trip the leg, control the body.
They ain't gonna stand put forever.
Why you want the Chiefs to lose so? Why you want the Chiefs to lose so?
They already have two. Lamar don't
Why?
have.
You're jealous because you know the Chiefs getting closer to the Patriots. Let's go to the last part.
No,
of this game.
no.
Let's go to the last part.
Folks, we're back and better than ever.
Your show have always appeared to be a show that is focused on going to the cause or looking to the cause.
We hardly ever talk about the white-collar crime, though. We always talk about the ones that involve more as physical violence against individuals.
The citizens will only measure transmission when water starts to flow through their taps.
Because the vision doesn't talk about local election.
Contract mafia is responsible for looting the country and they own and operate these politicians.
So if you are running a country and you can't say nothing as a prime minister, please take up your bag and go.
It is not comparative to the murder figures, but it is in fact very high.
I believe he's protecting certain individuals.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
Join me, Dr. Nalini Kokram, on What's Up Doc, where we discuss all your burning questions concerning health.
Trinidad and Tobago is among one of the highest risk group of patients that develop this form of genetic breast cancer.
What I'd like to take home from a short interview like this, screening. You must screen.
Because it's silent.
It's silent.
Yeah.
And because it's silent, you don't know it's there.
What's Up Doc, every Tuesday and Thursday on WESN, Content Capital.
You are watching Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Just give an overview of what exactly is that split arrangement.
Nah, you don't need to register nothing. We can do that another time. But then it becomes a hit, and then everybody starts to want to claim.
The laws that predate many of the independent countries' constitutions are going to be those colonial laws.
We know there are an infinite amount of circumstances that would lead to a murder.
I have a great idea and, I have a great concept.
but until it's actually expressed, it does not become intellectual property.
Accomplishments or targets of a forensic accountant is to quantify what may have been lost.
We believe we defend criminals and we manipulated the law and we exploited the system.
A responsible journalist will reach out to the person who they have the information on for a comment.
We are tackling the hard-hitting topics, some controversial topics, some topics we sweep under the rug. You don't always have to forgive in a relationship for it to move forward.
If it is you are in a situation where you forgive the person, but to the detriment of yourself, what are you really doing?
It is very uncommon for somebody in the younger age group to have dementia.
Atheists don't not believe.
I can't disprove God, but you also can't prove God, so we cannot have a stalemate.
We'll focus on the woman who's being the victim, or the man who's being the victim. We exclude the children.
Folks are trying to study the underlying brain mechanism to figure out how does this particular disorder happen in the brain? How is the brain processing this?
Don't worry about AI, worry about humans working with AI.
Are you willing to learn new skills to stay relevant for the future job market? That's the challenge that people are going to struggle with.
Every day, we communicate through stories. Stories of ourselves, our challenges, our goals, our experiences, and our aspirations. Storytelling is an art that we have mastered. WESN Film Studios comprises a collaborative team of experts with extensive industry experience locally, regionally, and internationally. The ability of your business to successfully communicate with your preferred audience depends on the strength of the stories you tell. Your vision should be communicated in a high-quality, professional, and creative way. From concept to post-production, advertising to film, multi-camera productions, live events, streaming, and virtual conferencing, we are WESN Film Studio. Let your own unique voice be heard and your vision realized. Call us today at 628-5835 for your next production.
WESN.
Welcome back to the program, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for being with us this morning. And this part of the conversation goes back to what I suppose could be deemed as a mini-series as we speak about our coral reefs and their ecosystems, well, globally. But of course, as we're of Tobago, the Caribbean as a whole has a lot to offer. So coral research actually helps us have a greater understanding of the systems and the biodiversity, but it has also revealed just how vulnerable such systems are and exactly what needs to be done to save them. Now, the individual who has been very vocal about this and who joins me once more on AM Prime is Dr. Anjani Ganesh, a coral reef ecologist at the Institute of Marine Affairs. She joins us virtually. Hello, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me again.
Well, thanks so much for joining us once more. So, in reading your latest contribution to the conversation, you pointed out, firstly, that the University of Queensland, Australia, they've been able to map over, well, close to 350,000 square kilometers of coral reefs. How has this mapping, this research, been a useful tool, in terms of management, conservation, and understanding of the coral reef ecosystems and their biodiversity?
So I think that the mapping of the technology of the satellite technology is helping us to get a broader and in some cases a deeper understanding of where our reefs are. So if you track back to when we first started to dive, the reefs that were being dived were based on dive sites for recreational use or for exploration. And that was limited by the air in your tank. So how far a diver can get, how deep they can go, they would be able to map those reefs to that extent. And now we have satellite technology that can span the globe and be able to use its sensors to detect a much larger area of coral reefs. And as those sensors get better, as they get sharper, as we have the tools to detect, the changes of the color patterns and the textures of the imagery, we can now be able to map at a more precise scale and at a larger area, essentially.
Does this mapping, is it limited to depths? Could it go to depths or the limits to such?
Yes, definitely, and that's a great question. While the satellites have increased our spatial awareness of where the reefs occur around the world, we still are limited because it's a satellite image and the image cannot penetrate beyond a certain depth with the color changes in the water column. And so reefs below 30 meters still have to be mapped using other technology. So whether it is ROVs or underwater drones, and using other sort of innovative tools like eDNA, which is what I mentioned in the article, where you collect water samples of DNA that has been shed from organisms to give you an idea of the communities that are present in different areas.
The eDNA, what does that stand for? I'm sorry?
Environmental DNA.
Right.
So we shed a lot of DNA in our environment. Everything around us that's alive sheds cells, and right now we have the technology to be able to use that in that limited concentration to identify the communities around us.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Ganesh, are there different types of coral reefs, different types of corals, of course, but are there different types of reefs?
100%. So reefs are classified by their environment. So mesophotic reefs, they occur between 30 meters and 150 meters depth. So meso meaning middle, photic meaning light. So it's a middle or low light environment, because you have aphotic, which is no light, and coral reefs cannot grow in that environment. And then you have shallow reefs where you have high light environments. And so light is one example of a changing environment which changes the types of reefs and how we can classify reefs. But you have reefs that are classified based on wave environments where certain corals can grow, certain corals can't grow. So I like to think of reefs like snowflakes. Every reef is shaped by the environment around it, and every reef is unique to some extent.
Well, if you've said that mesophotic reefs are a sort of the middle ground, they have coral reefs that are blooming beyond 150 meters?
They are coral reefs, but they grow without the presence of light. So they're deep sea reefs that grow in the absence of light, and they grow very, very slowly, but they still have a very critical role in providing habitat for organisms in the deep ocean. And I'm talking about, much deeper than where you have the mesophotic zone. So light penetrates perhaps between 150 and maybe to like, I'd say 300 meters of the top part of the ocean, but there you have thousands of meters below that have the majority of the ocean, which is without light. And you do get corals that grow on the bottom of the ocean. It takes, thousands of years to get to a certain size. They grow very slowly, and it's a very difficult area, as you can imagine, to study and to understand.
I think it's still incredible to learn that they are still existing beyond 150 meters, because all that's been taught to us about coral reefs and the importance of the temperature of the water and the sunlight penetrating the water, and that's rather incredible. But then it also, mesophotic reefs, it fascinates me even more. And you've actually focused a lot on mesophotic reefs in your articles. Why are they important in particular?
Well, I was personally fascinated because my former supervisor, he studied mesophotic reefs. So he had the technology and the tools, and he would go diving for very short periods of time to collect genetic information of those corals. And I think the idea that he had was that mesophotic reefs could potentially be a refuge for climate change because the waters are generally cooler. You have some species that can occur in the shallow reefs and in the mesophotic areas. And so when the shallow areas get bleached and impacted with mortality, there can be some reseeding from that mesophotic sites. What we are seeing, unfortunately, is that refuge that refuge theory is becoming we're seeing the deep being impacted just as much as the shallow areas. And so there may be pockets of refuge, but it all depends on how severe the changes in climate are.
Well, we've often spoken about changes in climate, but what is most intriguing now is how neighboring environments can actually impact upon coral reefs, and how the health of a coral reef could also impact upon neighboring environments. And one such example that you've spoken about is the relationship between seabirds and coral reefs. And I thought it was quite amazing. Could you please expand a bit more on what we've learned thus far between seabirds and coral reefs?
Yes, for sure. I thought it was a very interesting study that was done in the Chagos archipelago in the Indian Ocean. So if you can imagine, this archipelago is a series of inhabited and uninhabited islands. And the researchers, they looked at uninhabited islands, but they compared islands that were infested with rats because of human transport and commerce, and islands that were free of rats. And a lot of these islands are also seabird colonies. So you have the seabird colonies on the land, and then you have the coral reefs that sort of fringe the islands. And what they realized is that there was a relationship that was built up between the seabird colonies and the coral reefs, a beneficial one, where the guano, or the bird poop of the seabirds, would add nutrients to the water column and sort of feed, in a sense, or provide, essential nutrients for the corals to grow and whatnot. In areas on islands where the rats infested, unfortunately, it decimated the bird population. And what happens is that it changed that dynamic with the reefs. So they were able to see evidence of this relationship by looking at damselfish. And damselfish are unique in the sense that they don't just graze algae, they grow algae like farmers. And so they'll find a piece of dead coral, they would plant their algae, and they would tend to it. And what they found is that on rat-infested islands, the algae gardens were huge, but they were low in nutrition. So they couldn't get enough nutrition, so they had to grow more and plant more. But in the on the islands where there was a healthy, thriving bird population, the algae gardens were very small, and they were rich in nutrients. And because of that, the damselfish, they're very territorial. They were defending their little turf much more fiercely. So they saw evidence in the behavior changes of the fish, but also in the composition of the reefs, because when you have larger turf algae gardens, it means that it's impacting on the corals because the corals can't settle as much because there are limited areas for suitable corals to settle on. So a simple changes in the dynamics on land can have consequences in the reefs below. And we do have examples of that in the Caribbean with respect to like human activities and whatnot.
Wow, so you even link the damselfish to being farmers where they actually grow their own algae, and then you've got manure being provided by the seabirds. It's amazing when you look at nature, you know, we're not too far apart, aren't we?
No, we're not.
No.
That's how we can learn from nature, for sure.
But do seabirds benefit or see any benefit at all when they are contributing to these coral reefs and their health? How do seabirds benefit?
Well, the seabirds, they fish off of the coral reefs. And remember, reef habitats are sort of nursery grounds and habitats for a lot of marine life. And so they get their food from the coral reefs. I'm not sure if there's a direct link, circling back, between the damselfish and the turf algae, but they depend on thriving reefs and healthy oceans. So it's sort of that benefit.
And what you also mentioned, which really, you know, it was a great point in the sense that damselfish, when you saw near rat-infested islands where bird populations were lower, yes, damselfish had large, algae farms, if you'd like to call it that, but it was very low in nutrients. But then when they were near to islands that were heavily populated by birds, whilst there may be smaller pockets of algae farms, they were high nutrition, and they became very territorial. So is it that these factors that you mentioned also have an impact on the way that fish behave? Does it change their behavioral patterns in any way?
For sure. I think, so damselfish are naturally territorial, so they will defend their turf. And we see it in Tobago all the time. We do we do surveys underwater, and if we come across a garden, you will have some species that will swim past your mask and try to get and nip at you and try to get away from you. But what I think the environment does is it exaggerates certain behaviors, right? So if they were aggressive before, they would probably get more aggressive if their turf gardens aren't doing well, right? Naturally, right? So and you do see that changes in behavior. I think I mentioned with the butterfly fish, as their environment changes, their behavior also changes.
Could we link that back to human beings as well? Because as I'm saying, you know, the relationship is quite amazing when you study it. We're not that much different. I mean, even you use the example that in times of desperation, human beings will always look for the closest source of food, of shelter. It may change the way they think, the way they act, and what they seek. Is that also the case with fish in coral reefs? If the temperature changes within the waters, if the amount of sunlight reaching the waters, the nutrients within the waters, the algae farms, do we see that happening as well?
Yeah. So we have to adapt in times of needs. You know, there's the hierarchy of needs, right? For humans, there's food, shelter, things to survive, and the same applies for marine life. So the example I give in the article is the butterfly fish. So after a coral bleaching event or a reef disaster where the structures have been lost, butterfly fish will swim further away from their home range in search of food. And in doing that, they would come across, you know, other fish of different species that they would have conflict with. And so you'd see these conflicts increasing in times of high coral mortality because they're more desperate for seeking food out or seeking some form of nutrition. And yeah, so you do get those adaptive changes in behavior. I think, you know, once things come back to normal, their behavior will also readjust, right? But we are seeing a lot of changes and adaptations in behavior of marine organisms, for sure.
My final question to you this morning, Dr. Nace, is could it also lead to, perhaps an explosion in certain fish populations? We know down here we see the instance of the lionfish, and that was a huge problem. But the examples of which you've spoken about this morning, does it also explain why we are possibly seeing more and more of these species popping up everywhere, invasive species?
Yeah. Yes, that's one example of where we look at and where scientists have seen invasive species significantly change the ecology and the behavior of native populations. So lionfish is a good example where lionfish, they basically can engulf huge amounts of juvenile populations of fish species, which means that they're eating a lot of the juveniles of groupers, parrotfish, a lot of fish species that are important for the healthy reef environment, but also for our commercial fish species. And so when you have an invasion like that, it is very difficult for organisms to adapt to counteract. So that's when humans need to step in to control and manage the environment so that our native populations don't get decimated. Over time, I imagine that there would be some adaptation naturally, but that time frame is way too long before any significant decimation happens.
Well, Dr. Ganesh, I want to thank you so much for joining me this morning. As I mentioned at the start, it seems as though it's a bit of a mini-series in terms that we've been doing with the conversations that we've had and we are going to have. So thank you so much for joining me once more. Looking forward to the next time.
Yes, take care. My pleasure.
All the very best to you. Well, we will have more conversations, of course, on coral reef ecosystems and that biodiversity. And I'm always pleased to welcome Dr. Ganesh to the program. And we thank her for her contribution. And if ever you get the opportunity, I will encourage you to even find that opportunity to follow Dr. Anjani Ganesh and her columns, of which are published in the Newsday newspaper. Ladies and gentlemen, we take a break here on WSN's AM Prime, and when we return, we'll get into more discussions this morning. We'll be right back.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
You are watching Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Just give an overview of what exactly is that split arrangement.
Now you don't need to register nothing. You don't need. We can do that another time. But then it becomes a hit, and then everybody starts to want to claim.
The laws that predate many of the independent countries' constitutions are going to be those colonial laws.
We know there are an infinite amount of circumstances that would lead to a murder.
I have a great idea and I have a great concept, but until it's actually expressed, it does not become intellectual property.
Accomplishments or targets of a forensic accountant is to quantify what may have been lost.
We believe we defend criminals and we manipulated the law and we exploited the system.
A responsible journalist will reach out to the person who they have the information on for a comment.
Welcome back to AM Prime, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being with us this morning. So, my next conversation focuses on the Bogus Lit Fest, but in particular, the First Citizens Poetry Slam, National Poetry Slam, that is. It's considered the premier platform for spoken word here, not just in Trinidad and Tobago, but the Caribbean. And it started, has very humble beginnings starting in 2013, but it's now gained such a following that we have semi-finalists in the competition that will be giving their spoken word on the 23rd and 24th of March. That's 30 semi-finalists, that is. That'll then be broken down to 14 finalists who will face up against defending champion Kyle Hernandez. He automatically gets to defend his title, actually. But as I said, this premier platform for spoken word, I've been following this for years, so it actually gives me great pleasure to welcome to the program this morning, first of all, Miss Alette Liz Williams. She's the marketing and media manager of the Bogus Lit Fest. Good morning, Miss Williams. Welcome to the program.
Good morning. Thank you for having me and my lovely colleague this morning.
Yes, actually, we are fortunate to have two representatives from the Bogus Lit Fest because Miss Mariel Forbes, who's the Youth and Hospitality Manager, also joins us. Hello there. Welcome to the program.
Good morning. Good morning. Thanks for having us.
Well, thank you so very much for joining me this morning. So as I said, this is the premier platform for spoken word in the Caribbean. It's one of the lead-up events to the annual NGC Bogus Lit Fest. So let me start with you, Ms. Forbes. If you can give us an understanding of the significance of this championship and how it coordinates with the entire festival season.
Well, actually, the First Citizens National Poetry Slam is the closing event of the NGC Bogus Lit Fest, which runs from April 25th to 28th. So the slam closes off the festival, and it's, you know, like a big ticket item, a hot ticket item, where we have a lot of young people especially attend this event because it's really energetic, you know. So we tend to end with a bang every year at the festival.
That's why it's called a slam.
Exactly.
Miss Williams, one of the intriguing things about this particular competition is the routine of the wildcard selection. But exactly what is the wildcard selection? Could you give us an understanding of that, please?
Okay, so we have poets who only have just about not made the semi-finalist cut itself. But it doesn't mean that they're counted out. So what we do to give the competition a bit of pizzazz, the championship a bit of sass, is to add this interactive feature where the audience gets to see two poets on each semi-final night, that's the Saturday and the Sunday, face off against each other with poetry performance so that they can get a chance to be clumped into the semi-final list as a qualified semi-finalist, a bona fide semi-finalist. And you never know where they could go, because if they're clumped there, then that means that they have a chance to also advance to the final round, the Grand Slam. So that wildcard feature is both for the poets who would like to still get a shot, but also for the audience to be interacted and integrated into the experience of the slam itself.
Ooh. That, you know, we all like some sort of surprise. So, you know, when there's this wildcard event, everybody is itching to find out exactly who's going up against who. Ms. Forbes, back to you though. I mentioned 30 semi-finalists, but all in all, what has the participation been like in the competition this year?
Well, every year it just gets bigger and better. This year we had over 80 people audition, over 80 poets, audition for the championship and an opportunity to be crowned the Grand Slam champion and go up against, you know, Kyle Hernandez, who's last year's champion. So we have seen the slam grow from strength to strength. And the other thing that was really encouraging for us as well and gave us an idea of the future of Caribbean slam poetry is the fact that we had so many newbies this year to the championship. So we're really happy, you know, that people are very confident now to come up, to perform, to go up against some of the older heads and the greats. We even had a 10-year-old from Tobago who is one of our 4 wildcards at the semifinals, Mr. Marcus Wiley. So, you know, that was really exciting for us to see someone, you know, not even a teenager as yet, you know, audition and make his way to the semifinal rounds.
That is absolutely incredible. That's excellent news, actually. I'm very pleased to hear that. You see, I'm sorry I didn't enter this year. It's because I wanted to give everybody else a chance.
I mean, you know, everybody says that, but you know, you have to. You have to. Why not? Because the grand prize is $50,000. courtesy First Citizens. The second prize, $20,000, and the third prize, $10,000 TT dollars. So, you know, the pot is huge, and I don't blame anyone. I mean, if we didn't work with Bocas, I think Alat and I might have given ourselves a shot as well.
Very true.
Actually, is it too late to maybe I'll get one of those wild cards?
No, you just missed it. You just missed it.
Crikey.
2025.
Yeah.
I'll start writing from now. Miss Williams, this year's theme is Enter the Dragon's Mouth. It's a bit daunting at first glance, but there's more to this theme. Please, the theme in itself, how was this conceptualized?
Oh, well, let me tell you, there are a few things that kind of shape the reason why we chose this theme, right? First of all, it's the Chinese Year of the Dragon. So let's just put that out there. That's like an anchor. But also, the dragon's mouth is, well, we say Bocas Lit Fest. The word Bocas is Spanish for mouth, right? So we're starting off with two anchoring sort of connotations there. And then, of course, we speak about the journey. If you look at our posts on social media and so on, we're using this as a learning moment for the public who may not know about the little islands off the coast of Trinidad and Tobago that all have Bocas names attached to them. And then most people only know about crossing the Bocas to get to Tobago, and that's quite a journey by itself. So when we take all of these things into consideration, and then we know what dragons spit, right? Fire. And that's what we're expecting the poets to do when they deliver their poetry performances on the stage. So we're taking, you know, trending topics, we're taking things that are historical, and we're also trying to get the poets themselves fired up so that they're able to really perform at the best of their ability and sit on the stage and shock our audiences, but also have their very piercing topics understood, heard, and recognized, and get the chance to cash that prize in that Marielle was talking about.
You see, that's the thing. I can't believe I have to wait until 2025. Miss Forbes, in respect to the theme itself, I mean, 30 semi-finalists is incredible. 4 wild cards, actually. What have the performances been like this year, especially as it relates to the theme? So well explained by Miss Williams.
Well, there have been a range of topics across the championships so far. So we really look forward to seeing the poets stretch themselves. And usually what we found is that over the course of time, and as we get to the Grand Slam itself, you would usually see poets injecting the theme into their pieces in some way. So that is one of the things that we really look forward to, you know, the creativity that the championship allows these young people to bring out in themselves and to showcase, you know, what young Trinbagonian talent looks like.
Certainly, and I also could appreciate the theme even more, as explained by Miss Williams, because it really gives an in-depth approach to Trinbago and what Trinbago is and who we are as a people. I think that's most incredible. But I think, Miss Forbes, you gave a breakdown of the cash prizes that are available this year, and the grand prize is thought to be one of the largest in the world, possibly the largest in the world.
It is the largest in the world.
And here I am sitting down doing
exciting?
nothing.
Not auditioning. I'm really, really sorry.
That's okay. Listen,
you have a year.
The incredible part about this is I can still attend the semi-finals and finals. Miss Williams, can you tell me how I can do that? Tell me where I can get more information and how I can attend these events.
So, first of all, you need to understand that every year the NGC Bocas Lit Fest happens at the last weekend in April, right? So if you do a tack back, as we say, and you bring the time forward, you will see where the auditions fall. So there's no reason for you to miss it next year. That's what I'm saying. But for people who want to attend the semi-final round, you can look for all of the information on Facebook, Instagram, and X with the handle @National Poetry Slam, @National Slam TT, and on Bocas Lit Fest at Bocas Lit Fest on Facebook, Instagram, and X. And you know what? We also wanted to take this moment today to share who the semi-finalists were on your program. And I'm not sure if you have that wonderful little review that could be shown for everyone to know who would have made it through.
We actually don't, but I'll tell you what, no worries, because
we could call it out.
Please call it out, and we can always get back to it here on AM Prime as well, because this is conversation one. We still have to have another conversation when it comes to the finals, but please, if you will, call out the list, that's fine.
Sure. So, in alphabetical order so that we don't have anyone getting any hints. We have Abdul Majid Abdal Karim, a return, a baby Africa Williams, who is a first-timer, Alexandra Stewart, historical winner, she's won 3 times already, Alicia Haynes, first-timer, Annette Taylor, first-timer, Celestial Marshall, first-timer, Daniel Batiste, first-timer, Darian Cunningham, first-timer, Dennis Joseph, first-timer, Aaron Sandy, who's been in the winner's row before, Deshaun Hernandez, first-timer, Earth Lizama, first-timer from Tobago, Gabrielle Murray, first-timer, Joel Phillip, would have been a finalist before, Kalik Cook, first-timer, Gidisha Thomas, first-timer from Tobago, Kiran Isaac, who's been in the championship before, Kevin Sawyer would have been in winner's row before, Kevin Fortune, first-timer, Master Akeem Phillip, first-timer, Michael Logie would have been a finalist and a third-place winner in the slam before, Ronaldo Mohammed, he would have been a finalist before, Seth Sylvester, finalist and once a winner of the slam, Shakira Graves, he would have been a finalist, Shakira Burton, first-timer, Shamaya Lewis, finalist before, Celine Labari, our youngest finalist last year, Stephanie Smith would have been a semi-finalist. I think this is another time she's been that. Shwashti Maharaj, first-timer, Tevin Douglas, who is no stranger to the stage, and our 4 wildcards. Gabrielle Abdul, Marcus Wiley, the 10-year-old from Tobago, Nia Thompson would have been a semi-finalist and I believe a finalist before, and Ronaldo Briggs would have also been a finalist on the slam stage. So there you go, the full list, 30 poets, 4 wildcards. You heard how many first-timers, how many returns, how many are seasoned, and how many are new. So
yes, and it really actually caught my ears, the number of first-timers who have made the semi-finals this year. That is excellent news. Yep. Bocas Lit Fest is really doing a lot culturally and literary for our young people here in TNT. And not just the young people, but of course for everyone, actually. But it's so good to hear so many first-timers. We could only encourage that, and maybe next year we'll have even more.
And don't forget, if you would like to see all of these first-timers and the seasoned poets, our semi-final rounds are on Saturday, March 23rd and Sunday, March 24th. The Central Bank tickets are only $100. They are available online. You can visit bocaslitfest.com or Island e-tickets, and physical tickets will be available at nationwide selected retail outlets very soon. So we look forward to seeing you on the 23rd and 24th of March.
Well, Ms. Forbes, Ms. Williams, thank you very much for your time this morning and for all your hard work and efforts, and to the rest of the team. And we certainly look forward to the semi-finals. Maybe who knows, maybe all 3 of us might end up on stage having a maybe special guest appearance, wild cards. Anyway, ladies, thank you so very much for your time this morning and for all your hard work and efforts. Looking forward to all that is to come.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Have a great one. Take care. All the best. Ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like more information, you can, and you would have seen it on your screen, you can follow social media channels at National Slam TT. They are on Instagram, they're on X, that's formerly Twitter, and Facebook. And as mentioned, the physical tickets will be available soon, but you can purchase them online if you visit the Bocas Lit website. So tickets are only $100. Come out and support the festivities, come out and support the young people. And we also look forward to that wildcard event. 10 years old, that's incredible, isn't it? What an achievement. So best of luck to the semi-finalists, and we look forward to the competition. Remember, enter the dragon's mouth. We'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen, on AM Prime.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, The Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378 or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
The newest book is here, Closer to the Church, the debut novel by author and former Mayor Louis Lee Singh. Available at all the Home Store branches, Barataria, West Mall, Shogunas and C3 San Fernando. Paper-based bookshop 10 Nook Avenue, St. Anne's, WESN 30A Gattaca Street, Woodbrook, Metropolitan Bookshop, Ariapita Avenue, Woodbrook, and all RIK bookstores nationwide. Available online as paperback on Amazon.com and Kindle for e-readers. For more info, call 628-5835 or 389-6504. Also available from author Louis Lee Singh, I Used to Live in Heaven, Letters to My Granddaughters, and Local Government in Trinidad, Conspiracy Against the People.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you, what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through? Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
This is Face of Sports, WESN Content Capital. How you felt about the kiss on the lip?
That's the business. I'm not to do with that.
I find that was distasteful.
The national senior team, whether you like it or not, that is the model for all other teams to follow.
I'm assuming that the regional requirement may be a much stricter requirement.
This is not about Pro League and Super League. This is a league run by the Normalization Committee that I'm responsible for.
Nobody expected FIFA to fund this arrangement.
If we don't get a professional attitude towards this, we are doomed for failure.
You break the balance, trip the leg, control the body.
They ain't gonna stand put forever.
Why you want the Chiefs to lose so? Why you want the Chiefs to lose so?
They already have two. Lamar
Why? You're jealous because you know the Chiefs getting closer to the Patriots. Let's go to the last part.
No.
Let's go to the last part.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
Folks, we're back and better than ever.
Your show have always appeared to be a show that is focused on going to the cause or looking to the cause.
We hardly ever talk about the white-collar crime, though. We always talk about the ones that involve more as physical violence against individuals.
The citizens will only measure transmission when water starts to flow through their taps.
The Constitution doesn't talk about local election.
Contract mafia that's responsible for looting the country and they own and operate these politicians.
So if you are running a country and you can't say nothing as a prime minister, please take up your bag and go.
It is not comparative to the murder figures, but it is in fact very high.
I believe he's protecting certain individuals.
Every day, we communicate through stories. Stories of ourselves, our challenges, our goals, our experiences, and our aspirations. Storytelling is an art that we have mastered. WESN Film Studios comprises a collaborative team of experts with extensive industry experience locally, regionally, and internationally. The ability of your business to successfully communicate with your preferred audience depends on the strength of the stories you tell. Your vision should be communicated in a high-quality, professional, and creative way. From concept to post-production, advertising to film, multi-camera productions, live events, streaming, and virtual conferencing, we are WESN Film Studio. Let your own unique voice be heard and your vision realized. Call us today at 628-5835 for your next production.
Here is the WESN News on the Hour. I am Sira Ali. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Oil spill recovery operations intensify off coast of Cove, Tobago. Rushton Parry views the recent restructuring within the SSA as a warning sign. A 64-year-old man killed in hit and run. Highway Patrol Unit handed out 202 speeding tickets. Now for the details. Mayor Member of Parliament Rushton Parry views the recent restructuring within the SSA as a significant warning sign, indicating the alarming escalation of crime in TNT. He emphasizes the urgent need for substantial changes in the country's security framework, attributing this necessity to the pervasive issue of transnational crime and heightened concerns regarding criminal activities. Parry notes that the adjustments to the SSA comes as no surprise given the gravity of the situation. Additionally, he reveals that the U.S. government has requested information from the Trinidad and Tobago government regarding any local law enforcement agencies with connections to elite U.S. units based on information available to him. Recovery operations persist along the southern coast of Cove, Tobago, in the aftermath of an oil spill nearly a month ago. The spill, originating from the capsized vessel near Cove, inflicted damage to a nearby reef and has now spread to the eastern Caribbean island of Bonaire. According to the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries, The latest update indicates that salvage dive operations commenced on Sunday to evaluate the extent of the wreckage's contamination. On Sunday afternoon, a 64-year-old man identified as Ramuta Ramrup of Rosha Douglas Road in Barrackpore was fatally struck by a vehicle while nearing his home. According to police reports, the incident occurred at 2:30 p.m. when Ramrup was walking north along Rosha Douglas Road. The impact of the collision threw him several feet into the air, causing him to land on the roadway. Ramrup was pronounced dead on the scene. However, the driver responsible for the accident did not stop at the scene. Over the weekend, the Freeport Highway Patrol Unit handed out 202 speeding tickets to drivers. The traffic operations occurred on the Uriah Butler and Solomon Hojoy highways, overseen by Senior Superintendent Powder, Senior Superintendent Rampasad, and ASP Ram Patar. The initial exercise, held from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. on Saturday, led to the issuance of 100 tickets. Well, that's it to News on the Hour on WESN. I am Sira Ali. Thank you for watching.
Welcome back to AM Prime, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for being with us this morning. My next conversation actually focuses on youth voices in politics here in Trinidad and Tobago. We've welcomed many young people to the program before. We've had them as commentators on AM Prime. We've also had them on Talking Points, and it's something that we are going to get more and more involved with in the year ahead. But this morning, we are asking the questions, well, it's a question I've asked, but one individual actually had a lot of courage in writing this column questioning what a young political voice is prepared to do. I'm speaking about former national and regional youth parliamentarian Chris Hossain. He's with us in studio. Hello there, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
Good morning.
Of course, good morning to Trinidad and Tobago.
Well, I read your column, and I must say that it paints a very deep picture, as light as it may have been compared to what the conversations you would have had with your fellow peers or your colleagues. It paints a picture that even I have heard of young people speaking to me about their frustrations, their anxiety associated with TNT's future because of our political situation. What has really been said to you? What have you realized or digested more and more in your conversations with your colleagues and peers?
That no one is speaking to us, no one is engaging us. And I want to say that we need to understand a few things, that there's a Generation Z, and generation, I know that there's also other generations before and to come. But of course, we have looked on in this country in the past decade, and I'm just using the past decade for now. And what we have seen in this country is a type of political style that we don't subscribe to. And so the target voter, in my respectful opinion, has not been us. And I'll tell you something, and you know this, and of course our country knows this, that we are not a generation that is interested in race. Mm-hmm. We are not a generation that is interested in old talk. We are not a generation that is interested in popular opinions. And for the past decade, we have been insulted with that type of politics in this country. And so, as I explained in my article, what we wish to see is something new, something fresh, and something different. And I know that the popular view is, well, we would like a new party, we would like a third party, we'd like younger persons involved. But the fact is, when we look in our country, historically, there are two main political organizations, that is the People's National Movement and the United National Congress. And if we're very honest and fair, they both have contributed to national development in this country, and I'm not going to take that away from them. Mm-hmm. But where we are today, and I just want to zone in on crime, that is not normal. And as I said in my article, We have heard of young persons, young children dying and riding a bike. Could you imagine that? Yeah. Could you imagine that? And we flip through the newspapers, we scroll through social media, if that is how you get your news in this country, and we act as though it's just the new norm. It's just another statistic. That is not normal. And so we must be able to get to a place where we could speak about real crime fighting policies, not have one blame the other because they can't meet for crime talks. And I just want to touch on crime, because we could go all over in this interview, but of course time would not permit that. So no one is speaking to us right now, and the younger persons on both the PNM's bench and the UNC bench, I expect better from them. They ought to know better. Their political style is supposed to be better. And so I put them on notice.
You speak about putting them on notice. We get into that a bit later on. You speak about political style. What political style would actually appeal to young people? Because I know you mentioned, we're not subscribing to the old type of politics that delves deeply into race. We're not into that sort of divisive politics. But what sort of politics or political ideology would young people subscribe to now?
Of course, nation-building conversations. When you speak to Trinidad and Tobago, we must feel included. And not just the younger generation, but everyone. Because you're not leading only your base in your political organization to ensure that in an internal election you remain the political leader. That's not who you're speaking to. You're speaking to the country. Because understanding fundamentally whether you are the prime minister or the opposition leader, you represent all of us in the job that you do. And this is our job. Never forget that. And when I look on the type of style that I would like to see, and I'd see real productive conversations, at least in the parliament, real policy makers. And time would not permit us to get into it, but we need to have discussions about renewable energy. Real conversations, not popular opinions, not make a post on social media, have it go viral and make us believe that you're doing something. Because we're just at the PR stage. I want to have real conversations about that. And AI, how is AI going to impact the labor force? And those are the kind of, the nation-building, futuristic things that we ought to be looking at right now in this country. And simply, what we have right now is old talk.
Do you think young people have done anything about it? Or do you think young people have also added to this level of sentiment? One could argue, if you take a look at the voting turnout, it's been poor. Young people do not feel the need or the want, the desire to vote because of the type of politics. I understand that, but at the same time, if you do not vote or if you do not cast your ballot, which is your right to do so, then you are just contributing to your own problems, aren't you?
I agree with you. And I think young persons, as turned off as we may be with this politics in Trinidad and Tobago, we need to participate. So I wish to agree with you, and I want to tell the younger persons looking on that you must, at every opportunity that you get, engage in the election. I mean, persons fought for this. It's our modern democracy. It's a constitutional right. And it's how you express yourself. It's the gift of choice. It's a gift of choice. But where do we start in this country? We have a general election due next year. Of course, interestingly and conveniently, in today's conversation, there's a UNC NATEX election due in June of this year. And so the UNC has an opportunity. The membership of the UNC has an opportunity to do some introspection. Where would they like to go from here? Where would they like to go from being in opposition for the past decade? But it's beyond being in opposition. Where would they like to take the country? I also would put the PNM on notice as well. I don't think they have any internal election this year, so I can't speak on that. But when they do, as much as they're in government, as much as they may enjoy that right now, the reality is that should an opposition party gain governance and perhaps the PNM becomes the opposition, the organization that is the PNM may become unelectable because of their, I would say, governing style at this point.
When you take a look at what both parties have to offer at this point, do you think that anything will change anytime soon? I take a look at the PNM, I take a look at the UNC. It ties into succession planning as well. Neither party seems to have a plan, because June 2024, a national executive election, given all that we've heard thus far, there probably is an acceptance already of the outcome of that election.
Well, of course, there are some persons who look at this as a career. And there are some politicians in this country, and I think we as citizens have to be held to account as well, that we have added and contributed to the culture of, well, loyalty to party. We praise some of them as though they are some sort of almost like a religion at times. And so that kind of culture, we need to shift away from that. Do I see something changing in the short, or it can change in a short space of time? I said, yes, it can. It is very possible. We must never lose hope in this country. And elections, we must all participate in. I said earlier on, the UNC has an internal election, a national executive election in June, and let's see what their membership does. And when the PNM national executive election comes around, let's see what they do as well. And I want to say this because in Trinidad and Tobago, when you look at our voters, you have either PNM, UNC, swing, third party, undecided, that third constituency. I don't think, and I've seen several commentators speak on this, and I want us to be careful in how we speak about Trinbagonians. A UNC voter and a PNM voter, they are a Trinbagonian. Their voice matters as well, right? So, because they may belong to a party, it doesn't mean that their opinion is lesser than maybe someone who's independent. Mm-hmm. So I think we need to understand that. And so these organizations, they ought to be engaged in diplomatic, political conversations with their membership to ensure that their policies are in line with who they represent. I don't really think I see that from both parties right now.
Do you see that happening from any of the other parties that have, are relatively new? For example, most recently, I think the biggest news right now politically is the alliance, it would seem, between the PEP and the United National Congress. That in itself, we can have very heavy conversations and debates about, but that's just an example of one. A second example is the National Transformation Alliance. There seems to be a split there between the UNC and the NTA, although not official. But then you have Gary Griffith, who is leading the NTA. You've got Hope, who's led by Timothy Allen-Smith. They have Steve Alvarez, Louis Lee St. Karen as the sheriff. There's an alliance now between them and the Congress of the People, a party of which everyone thought was more or less non-existent. You've got the PDP, of which is led by Watson Duke. Whether or not that party is still relevant, not in a disrespectful manner, but given the course of all that has happened. And then you have the Tobago People's Party. And there are other smaller parties as well. But what are they offering? Are you seeing anything from them?
I think there's value in everyone. I think everyone, when we speak about nation building and where we want to go in a country, everyone needs to participate in this conversation. Everyone. But what we have an issue with in this country is being able to divorce policy making and debate from personality. And we have seen many politicians in this country leaned more on personality, leaned more on charisma politics, and that has sustained their political life. Some has leaned on their gender, and they play to it, because that has sustained their political life. When we look at the NTA and the UNC, and I would call it a squabble at this point, it's a bit of a deja vu, right? It's a bit, when you look at the key players involved, Mrs. Prasad Bisasa, Mr. Griffith, it's a bit of a deja vu. And so, again, I say within the United National Congress, there's an ATEX election during June. Not political leader, but, of course, there's democracy within the UNC. And if you look at what the UNC was founded on, was really on unity. And so they have an opportunity, again, the membership has to pay close attention to what is going on in their organization. And they have an opportunity to course correct in time for a general election. PEP and Philip Edward Alexander, I would choose not to comment on him right now. I don't think that is something worthy of commenting on right now. I think he has been a bit of a very contentious individual, especially his comments about the United National Congress. And I think you have a lot of questions to answer because, of course, we want to trust you. And we want to trust this relationship that you speak of in joining Mrs. Prasad-Bissessar. But just a couple months ago, you were very anti her and her leadership and the party,
well,
and also the PNM.
He seems to have been anti-everyone a couple months ago.
So there's, and I noticed this morning, I was looking at the news, even within his organization, the PEP, he has some questions to answer as well. So we'll await, give him some time, you know, and he's a very opinionated guy, and hopefully on one of his Facebook Lives, he would be able to account to the population in the same manner that he would like for the PNM and the UNC to account to the population. I hope that his membership would hold him to account. With regards to HOPE and COP, I think so far what I've seen with HOPE, I've seen something that gives us a little bit of hope, you know. These are persons of a track record and they seem to be sensible. And they're on, I mean, the conversations is very productive. But again, when we speak about nation building, we speak about everyone. So I hope that the opposition parties can get it right. And there are lessons to be learned from the 2010 alliance by Mrs. Prasad-Bissessar's leadership. There are lessons to be learned.
Why does it take an alliance? And this is what we're seeing now. We're seeing alliances being formed in 2024. National election in election year actually in 2025 because you have THE as well. And I believe in 2026 is local government. So the next 2 years are crucial. Why does it take these strategic alliances, as they're being called, to bring together some level of unity, which in itself is, one could say, is disingenuous?
Well, we have to look at our history. And we need to be, again, fair and honest. The People's National Movement has been in existence since 1956. So this is a well-oiled, mature political organization, and it is an institution. I mean, if we look at the last PNM internal elections, Dr. Rowley was heavily criticized for his governance style, not much of his politics, because of course your job as a political leader is to win elections. That's your job. As a political leader, it's to get into office and execute your party's policy. When we look at the opposition, or at least, and we look at the UNC right now, they have not, in the past 10 years, under its current leadership, they have not been able to get that third constituency voter. And I think that they think that by having these alliances, the alliances would be able to speak to that person. Unfortunately, look at the last local government election, 30.34%. The population did not buy into any of the parties. Even the alliance, they did not really buy into. And so, again, where do we go from here? Because we must be solution-oriented. We must have a method in how we operate in this country. We can't just say remove both of them or get a third party. That's unrealistic, right? So these are the organizations. This is what we have to work with. And so the call must be sounded not just with, well, I don't want the PNM, I want the opposition. It must be internally within the organization to shift the direction in which the organization is going.
So, if we get into some more difficult questions now, the Prime Minister has hinted at the possibility that he may not go up as for the post of Prime Minister or as political leader of the PNM in 2025. This is something, by the way, that he did in 2020 when he was being sworn in. And also what he said the night of the general election win, he says on the political platform as well, that this was his last run. When we're not sure what's going to happen next year, we'll see. The thing is, with the opposition leader, no hints at all as to any change within the party. Do you think that the United National Congress with Kamla Prasad-Bissessar as the leader, currently, all things considered, have a genuine possibility of winning an election in 2025? I ask that question in the context that if we're disagreeing with political styles or the politics that is being said today, I understand that. But we have this thing in Trinidad, the same. We don't vote a party in, we vote a party out.
Yeah. Mrs. Prasad-Bissessar has tried. she entered politics as a minority, and she has a tremendous career. I mean, when we look at her accolades, she's a first female AG, she's a Minister of Education, she became the opposition leader at a point, then became the political leader of the UNC. Very quickly, in a couple of months, she was able to get into government, and I believe it was 2912, if I'm not mistaken. And she held the People's Partnership together for 5 years. Yes, we can debate how difficult that would have been, but it was a tremendous task. But the question I have for Mrs. Wisesa is, what more can you give? What more can you offer this country or the organization that is the UNC? And if we look at the track record in the past 10 years, I think she has done her best. And I think it's...
Has she?
Well, I mean, her best. Her best may not have been good enough, you know, right? May not have been good enough. But she has done her best. I hope that these politicians are trying their best, you know, whatever that may be to them. But I hope it is their best. But of course, what more can she offer at this time? And it's not a way that get rid of she no good, this or that. It is about taking the organization forward. And I think she served herself and served the country, and even Dr. Rowley, and we can look at Mr. Basdeo Pandey and Mr. Manning, and they served for their time. But of course, we want to take the country forward in a more futuristic way, away from that type of politics.
Okay, so let's flip that around. Let's say the current Prime Minister, Dr. Keith Rowley, he decides to remain as political leader heading into 2025 because they had their executive elections last year. So he is to be, political leader heading into 2025. He decides, you know what, I'm going to be the political leader. I'm going for the position of Prime Minister again. Given, as you just mentioned, the style of politics, he's been criticized heavily for his style of politics, and not necessarily his policies, but a lack of policies. Given that on his end, but also the track record of the opposition, they will say that they won the local government elections last year. They've lost.
I want to interject on that.
Sure.
That they won the local government election last year. I don't think any 7 is bigger than the other, right? And when you look at the numbers, for example, that seat of Indian Walk Lengua, in 2019, the candidate for the UNC is a guy named Rajesh Lal. He would have won that seat overwhelmingly. And so, for it to come so close that it is now in the courts, I don't know if that's a win. I don't know. But I do accept that they picked up a seat in San Fernando, Marabella West, under John Michael Aliboka. So I take, and I understand also in Arima, the numbers weren't that bad. So there are different arguments to take. But I'm just saying, for argument's sake, and let's just say, they did win. We're going to say they did win, right? Yeah? Let's give them benefit of the doubt. What is their position currently? If it is that they said the alliance worked, the NTA and UNC alliance worked, then what is the position that they're going to be in for 2025, if indeed that, according to them, they won with NTA, given what has happened with NTA?
Well, it's not that. The question I would have asked ties into what the UNC has presented, and that is the chances of Dr. Keith Rowley, who has won the election in 2020, who won the election in 2015, and quite possibly could win it again in 2025. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, you look at the numbers, even in 2020 and 2023, the voter turnout over the past, in general and local, it has dwindled, right? And what we have right now is the PNM base versus the UNC base. And earlier in this interview, I said that the PNM has existed since 1956, whilst the UNC came about around the 80s, from Club 88. Of course, you had them won the 1995 election, but then there are different iterations, because of course the Pandey-led United National Congress is not the Mrs. Prasad Wisesa-led United National Congress. So there are different iterations of the United National Congress. So I think right now we have the main bases fighting each other. So that third constituency voter, once they come out and vote, and statistically, if we look at the stats, We saw it in 1986 with the NAR, that 33-3. We saw it in 2010 with the People's Partnership. So right now, I think you just have the main PNM versus UNC bases fighting each other. And maybe that's why we get the result we get. But let us be very certain here. This is not any sort of overwhelming mandate for the government. I mean, you cannot be confident when you have a voter turnout that low.
And the argument would be that the United National Congress gets the popular vote. That doesn't matter. So what are we looking at? All things considered from this conversation, all that you've put on the table, all that has been said, what are we looking at heading into 2025?
Well, we have an election, an internal NATEX election for the UNC in June of this year. And so the organization has the opportunity to course correct in time for 2025. Should they choose to stay with its current arrangements and its status quo remains the same, then what we will have is a repeat, and I think it would be a recurring effect of what has happened for the past decade with the two major political organizations in this country, because we have been offered the same two persons, Dr. Rowley or Mrs. Prasad Bisasa.
Is it a change? Or is it a change? Or either politician basically the same?
I think they are different political identities and ideologies, but they do lean into similar tactics in how in their campaigning at times and in their messaging. I've seen them both, and they practice the politics of their time. They practice the politics of their time.
The politics of their time. I suppose that leads into a conversation part 2, of which we don't have time for this morning. But Chris, thanks so much for joining me on the program this morning, and I look forward to future commentary. As I said, we have the next 2 to 3 years are very crucial for TNT. I suppose we have a lot of conversations to get into.
And I want to say thank you for having me on. I want to say Trinidad and Tobago, you have the gift of choice. Everyone, because when we speak about nation building, we speak to PNM, UNC, and the rest of all of us, everybody. So choose wisely.
An election is an opportunity. Utilize it. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been AM Prime on WESN Content Capital. Thanks so much for joining me. Thanks so much to my guest this morning, Chris. Thank you very much for your time once more. And ladies and gentlemen, a lot more conversations to come. To stick with WSN throughout the course of the day. But I'm Keaton Shaw, wishing you a productive day ahead, a safe one, that is. And we'll see you again very soon. Bye-bye.
WESN.
This is Face of Sports, WESN Content Capital. How you felt about the kiss on the lip?
That's the business. I'm not to do with that.
I find that was distasteful. The national senior team, whether you like it or not, that is the model for all other teams to follow.
I'm assuming that the regional requirement may be a much stricter requirement.
This is not about Pro League and Super League. This is a league run by the Normalization Committee that I'm responsible for.
Nobody expected FIFA to fund this arrangement.
If we don't get a professional attitude towards this, we are doomed for failure.
You break the balance, trip the leg, control the body.
They ain't gonna stand put forever.
Why you want the Chiefs to lose so? Why you want the Chiefs to lose so?
They already have 2. Lamar don't have.
Why?